Um, sorry for that delay. Samuel, I can see I only have one message in the chat. Samuel, is that okay? Yeah, that's Samuel. How are you doing today? Welcome. We're going to continue from where we left off yesterday. So if you are with me on the stream already, feel free to drop a message in the chat so that I will be sure that I'm communicating with somebody. All right. How many of us are on this call right now? Drop a message if you can hear me. I can see Samuel. Drop a message if you can hear me. Okay, right. So let me start by sharing my browser because we have yeah. Let me see. Start by sharing my browser. Okay. Okay, so I hope this is much better. I hope you can see my screen. This is what we were looking at yesterday. And, we said that we are going to have primarily two modules, right, in the backend. So I'm going to breeze through the backend. If you have any question, or if you spot something that you're not, very familiar with, you can call my attention, right? So let's see. I think I have that project on my desktop. That is, if I can remember, demo project. Oh boy. Oh yeah, I think it's a feedback project, right? And yeah, we have the API right here. Okay. All right. So we created two modules, primarily two modules. And what we are simply going to do today is finalize our API design, and I'm going to be fast with that. Remember, we have our actions. I always map out these actions. Okay, so we have the actions like the business related actions, and of course the feedback, the customer action, right? So the customer action falls under this feedback. So if you look at this, we have business, and we also have feedback, right? You can also choose to say, oh, I want to structure this according to the business and the customer, who happen to be the entities, right? Okay, or you can decide to say, okay, I want to basically map this based on the action. So just to make this easier for you to understand, I can choose to say I want to map this based on the customer module and the business module. But the customer module would have the customer as an entity would have various actions. The business would also have various actions. So what I prefer to do is to rather map this out based on the action. So we have business actions, right? Or we can even call that account actions. And then we also have feedback actions. So instead of mapping it based on business as an entity, I am mapping it based on business as an action, right? Which you might prefer to say, okay, that is kind of confusing. Let's just go with accounts, right? So that will be account actions, all right? And you have create accounts, right? Because that is basically what we are doing, update accounts and delete account. So delete business account, blah blah blah. You get my point. So I thought about this yesterday, and I felt that this might be confusing. So I think it was better if I just called that an account and then call this feedback. So we have the feedback action, as you can see, and the feedback action basically falls under two categories. We have the feedback action that falls under the business, and the feedback action that falls under the customer. Okay, which means for the actions that fall under the business, they should be able to get fetch the feedback data and also fetch a single feedback, and that has to be protected, right? It has to be protected because only the business should be able to perform this, right, based on their probably based on their signed in credential or something. All right. So let us map this properly in our code. So I said account and feedback, which means I'm going to change this to account, right? Account and feedback. Now I think someone was also asking me in my DM yesterday, when we have controllers, are we going to put every single controller here? Yes. But, you can also choose to do things like this. So if you want to make it modular, but I think it depends. If you're working on a microservice, kind of systems, I would definitely advise you go this route where you have your controller as a directory or as a folder, and then you have, your specific actions, right? There's nothing very special about it. I think the only thing I would say is that it makes your code even more modularized and simple to understand. So, for example, create business would be its own action, right? Create, right? And then you have, maybe update record, right? And maybe you have like delete. So of course, this is me just mapping this out with a simple verbs, but this is not what you probably want to do. You probably want to have something like delete accounts, right? So you probably want to have create accounts, probably want to have update accounts, so that we can be very sure of what is going to happen here. So within the create account, you probably want to have this create account, right? And now this is the only code you're going to have in here. Okay, so this is just an example. We're not going to use this, by the way, but I'm just showing you that this makes your code even cleaner. Specifically having an action per file. Okay, so update account. All right, and of course, you have your test files right here. So you can always structure your test files based on the modules that you have, of course, right? So you can basically structure your, test files based on the modules, and you can have things like, you can have things like, let's see, let's take up these guys. Okay, also take up these guys for now. Oh, okay. I think I did the wrong thing there. So I was supposed to do that within this. Yeah. So we can basically move this out. So just like this. So this is an example of what you might, probably have in your test, and this would be, the test JS, right? So the test of JS, or if you're using any other, maybe like Jest or something, I mean, you just have to follow the standard, way of outlining some of these stuffs, right? Yeah, I hope you understand what I'm trying to show you here. We'll get to this. We'll get to this. So let's just proceed with the previous pattern, right? So we have our controllers, we have our model, we have repository, route, and schema. Before we do this, let's finalize what we started yesterday in Stoplight Studio. All right. So I think someone is asking that I share this. Now, remember, we did not really do anything very special here, right? This is not really an architectural diagram or the best diagram you can have for describing what we're trying to do. Whenever you have diagrams, you should probably have what I call legends to describe, just like you have a map, okay, to describe, the various shapes that you have in your diagram. This is not really explaining anything, right? It's not really explaining this in such a way that a developer that is not working with you would understand what you have done. Remember, so we are not using this for. Um, I would say this is just a rough diagram that we just came up with. So always have that at the back of your mind. Don't draw this Don't draw diagrams this way when you're working on a real project with people. Okay. So let me share this with you. I think that should be okay. I think there's a way to save this and grab the URL. Okay, correct. All right. Okay, so how many of you do I have here? I'm seeing Blessing Pepper, Samuel, just the two of you in the chat. Okay, so but I can see we have more numbers watching. All right, so let's go back into Stoplight Studio, and let's check out our feedback API. Okay, so right now we have our feedback API, and in the feedback section, we basically have this guy, which is to submit feedback. Remember, we have these other items, but these items will basically come under the business, right? So this will come under the business, and we have to specifically state that only a business, should be able to access this. Only a verified business and validated business data should be able to access this. But if you take a look at this right now, since we are following the actions, it means that we basically have to also have these items, right? So to fetch feedback data, we are probably fetching a lot of data here. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a new action, right? So we're going to add a new action to this. So I'm going to add the get action, and the get action is going to fetch all the feedback data. Of course, it would have I believe we should be able to add some sort of, route params, query params, right? For sorting, filtering, paginating, and all those stuff. Then to fetch a single feedback data. So we're going to have, maybe feedback and also feedbacks, right? So I think that makes sense. If you have for the feedback, we're just going to get a single item here. So I'll say get a single feedback data, right? Um, for business use, right? So I can always use this tagging. So let's click on that and I'll say feedback, right? Feedback. Okay, so let's see. I think we also added tag here. Nice. So let's okay. So this would allow a customer submit a new feedback. Okay, right? And for the get, say this would allow businesses. This would allow business get single feedback data. All right. Um, and yeah, I mentioned the feedbacks, right? That's a new part, of course, right? So that is feedbacks, all right? And for the feedbacks, we want, of course, the get requests. So let's tag that properly as well, feedbacks. And this would allow businesses get a paginated, okay, to get all feedback data with pagination, sorting. Okay. So this is basically what we have. Let's go back to the get operation here and let's try to add some responses. Okay, so if it's successful, when you're fetching, you have 200. That's a success, right? If it fails, let's say something is wrong, in the yeah, like on the server. So let's just go with 500 internal server error. That's a possible error that might happen. And yeah, so if we go back to the feedbacks right here for the get request, the single get request, let's add the response. Let's add the response. So if it's 200, of course, that's success. And let's also stick to 500, right? If we have an error, no error. So if there's a server error, just give us this. Okay, so this is fine. If we come back here, so we have fetch single feedback, fetch all the feedback data, and submit a feedback. So that is what we need to work with, right? For now. So let's put in some of those details here. Some of the actions. Okay, and now for the accounts, which is primarily a business thing. So our grouping now is based on action. Always remember, I am grouping based on action. The organization might choose to group based on, roles or accounts. Some applications you see they have like business, user, and I would prefer to work with actions, um, except for some reasons I want to intentionally, work with the entities, right? So for example, if you're doing a DDD, right, domain-driven development, um, I think it depends, but I've seen a lot of developers also looking at things from the entity, right? So they have customer, and then they have all the they have account creation, feedback data. I feel it leads to complication because the specific you can have an action or a type of action occurring in different modules. I think that's complicated, right? Looking at the cognitive, looking at the way people think or the way we reason about things, we tend to group things together based on I think how similar they are, right? So if you have like a user and then you have a specific action for submitting feedback, you have so you have like a feedback a controller inside the user, inside the user module, and you also have the maybe some other controllers inside the user module, I feel it is going to lead to complication. But I mean, tell me what you think. If you prefer that, I think it depends on your team. Eventually, okay. So the next one will be for accounts. So I'm just going to pick this up, paste it right here. I'm going to take this guy off. So for the account, for the business account, we have create account, update account, delete account. So let's come in here. I'm going to create a new part, right? Which of course you can also create an endpoint from here, right? So we can call this. Let's just create a tag of the accounts, and then this is slash accounts. So remember we said create, update, delete. Okay. So I'm going to have create, update, and delete. So let's just say update a business record, right? And let's say delete, or yeah, business account, delete business. And for post, I would say create a business account. Oh boy, I think I just made a mistake. Let's go back. Come on. So I think there's something wrong with the UI. I have this item just covering the screen here. So let's say create a business account. Okay, so create. All right, so we have this right now: account, post, put, delete, and we can specifically put in some of the data. So when we're creating a business account, what should the shape of the data look like, right? That's something we have to then ask ourselves. What should the shape of our business data look like? First off, I think we can just choose to work with like the business name, right? And let's see what other data can we have. Let's call this. But the business name has to be, sort of. Business names might, I don't know, business names might not be unique, right? So we need to be able to have a kind of a way to identify the business. I don't know if I can probably call that the business uh, identifier, right? So for example, when you have like both click or top universe, right? The identifier would come in like at top universe, kind of something would append, right? Um, and we already have business name, so we can have like the address. We can have like let's remove this prefix. So let's just say name, identifier, address. What else are we looking at here? So let's say we have some sort of contacts, just a simple phone number or something, or we have email, we have phone, right? Um, we have let's say we have what else? Okay, so I already have address, I have email, I have phone, I have identifier, I have business name, and wow, I think this is fine. So this is unique. This is the business name, like top Lagos. Address can be Ikeja Lagos, for example. Email can be beep Lagos.org. And phone, of course, I can just do +234 yeah. Okay, so let's just say this is the data we want to work with for our business, right? This identifies our business, and this is the unique thing that makes it. Yeah, so this is the unique thing here. So I think this works, right? For now, that works. So let's go to the post section there, and I basically want to first off make sure that I have that request body. I can call that a new account, right? I will say generate from JSON. This is in here, Control V, generates. Now we have that generated right here. So that's my new account. And I can say this is the new uh, requests body. Create a new business account, right? Okay. So let's go back here, and under the post section, I would say okay, action for creating a new business account. Okay. And for the body, so I want to simply select the new account. And for my response, if it's successful, I want to start with 201, which is created. Of course, that is a success. If someone sends, a body that is not, proper, I think that should give us 422. Hope that's correct. Yeah, I think that's correct. Okay, so that's an error. And 500 as well, we can that's an error. So there's something wrong with the server. So yeah, and puts. So puts is going to work with the same. We have to first, tell ourselves if someone wants to, like what exactly do we want them to be able to update, right? And what exactly do we want them, not to be able to update? So looking at this, I think maybe they should be able to update everything, right? From the name, identifier, address, email, phone number. But in some systems, in some software, you probably don't want them to be able to update some things. So what we do most times is you have to then create a new request body, right? So for example, let's assume we don't want them to update identifier at any point in time. You probably want to use, have this, right? And if you have it this way, then you have to then create a new request body and call that update account. All right. Um, yeah, so I'm going to say new request body update accounts. But for now, I still want update account to be exactly the same thing because I don't think there's anything wrong in allowing them update some of these records. Okay, so let's go ahead and generate this. So updates account information. Save that. All right, and finally, deletes. Okay, so let's first go back to puts and specifically say update business account information. Always remember one thing, always remember to add your tags, okay? So you see I have a tag right here, account, all right? If I check out the put section, I have account, delete, I also have account. So let's go back to put. When you update something, you probably, of course, have a body here, that should be update account, and our response, if it's successful, um, yeah, if it's successful, let's see what we can have. So let's just use 200, right? If it's successful, if that was updated, success. And I'm just going to use, if there's an error on the server, I'll use the internal server error thing there. So 500. And let's just have an error response. So finally, I'll jump into delete. And I would say delete a business account. One question you would ask yourself is if an account is deleted, what happens to their records? Do you want to delete that alongside? Maybe that's what you want to do, but let's see how it goes for now. So when we are deleting, we want to delete based on query param. So we will specify that in our code, right? But yeah, you can specify some of those things here, and I think that's also amazing. So you can choose to delete based on query params, but I think it's also ideal, especially since the business is deleting their own account, that you are able to, work with some sort of authentication mechanism, maybe using a JWT token, right? Pick their business details from the JWT token. You don't want anybody to randomly use a URL to delete another person's account, right? So use their JWT token and specifically take what you want from there. All right. So we can say when you are about to delete, we expect you to pass in, the header of authorization, right? Authorization. And in the authorization, we expect you to, pass in some kind of string, right? Or you can even grab this from here. So let's see if we specifically, um, let me see, what can we do here? Okay, so this is basically a security schemes. This is not what I want to do. So I'm just going to take this off for now. Yeah, so we can actually use the header option and set that we want to grab authorization from the header, right? Instead of doing this, let's just do this here, okay? So authorization, and we expect a string. So I would say bearer token auth string, right? So it would come in from here. Even though we are not going to be setting this up right now, I just want to show you that you can do this here, okay? And if something is deleted successfully in the response, that is meant to be 200, right? deleted successfully. All right, okay, and if you probably have an error on the server, let's just stick to 500 as well, internal server error, right? And yeah, error. So this is good, right? So far we've been able to create this feedback, and account. You can also put in the feedbacks into the same tag as feedback, right? You can do that because you know that it should be together. This is just going to give you like more like all the records at a time. So we are using a different endpoint, of course, right? Feedbacks. Don't say feedback slash all, right? I think it's better to say feedbacks, right? So yeah, let's see what we have right now. Let's grab our code. I also think for the put operation, we should probably have the same header thing here, authorization, right? So bearer token or string, okay, and yeah, okay. So let's go ahead and grab the entire code, and let's go into our file. I'm simply going to drop this inside the swagger.json file. Just replace the whole thing, and let us do nodemon index. Oh, no, oh, that is not what I want. Nodemon suggest. Okay, so yeah, let's see. Let's see what we have now. So it says I think we have an error, and let's try to figure out why. Cannot find model business. Okay, yeah, that's correct. We change that to accounts. But to go back in here and change this to accounts. Okay, so let's save this now. Let's see what we have. Yeah, so this is running, and oh yeah, okay, we have an error. So it says app.use requires a middleware function. Requires a middleware function. So let's see what is wrong here. Yeah, that's right. So if we are trying to work with accounts, we have to really specify what we are sending out here. So, and remember that this was also changed. I think it was changed to create accounts, not create business. Let's verify that. Okay. Okay, so where do we have that mistake? Right here. Right, so if everything is fine, we should not have an error, right? So this is running, and we can simply this for the meantime. So we are simply going to jump to our browser, and I'm just going to say localhost 3001 slash yeah, so slash docs to see our docs, right? Just to see documentation. Okay, so if you have any question from how we created this, I think you can actually ask a question in the chat, right? While I move on to the next. So let's see. Right. If you have any question, just drop that in the chat. We have our feedback. You see, it falls under feedback, including the the feedback, and also the feedbacks, right? And I think I forgot to add there. You see, I forgot to add there the single detail for this, the description. That is something you should always do, right? I forgot to add the description for this. Yeah, so you can always add your description, if possible, even make it more detailed. Okay, add more details. Yeah. So let's go ahead and start implementing this, right? Let's start implementing this. But yeah, one thing you can also do, and you can use the Swagger doc, right, to generate your code. Remember, I've taught you how to do that several times. So we can simply go to the Swagger editor, editor.swagger.io. Okay, so I can paste this in here, convert it will convert it into YAML. Then of course I can choose to generate my server. Remember Node.js server. Of course, you're not really generating Express. You're just generating a boilerplate code, and yeah, so it might not be very helpful for you. But I think if you check out the controller section, you can basically, this might be helpful, right? This might be helpful, especially the fact that you already have like the controllers. Okay, so that might be helpful. And I'm sure you can see the way they also structured this, right? So feedback and accounts. Yeah, so we can basically work with that. Let me close this. So let's go ahead and use this code. So this is our account. Let's see, accounts controller is this here, right? And let's check out the feedback controller. I'm going to delete a bunch of things though, right? I don't need the whole, the whole code base. I'll delete some of these things you're seeing here, all right? Okay, so just to make you understand how some of these things can actually be used. Let's go straight into creating a feedback. To start with. So we have our controller right here, and the data we need for this. Remember, we actually specified the data we need when you're creating a feedback. So if I click on this right now, it's going to give us the detail, right? So you see data we need: first name, last name, email, blah blah blah, and you can basically choose to work with that, right? I usually use Joy for validation, and one thing I love to do, very well is to set up my validation using a middleware, right? So I love to do that. So let's go ahead and create a middleware directory, and yeah, I think I should just let's see. Okay, I am going to simply take some of my yeah. Let's just give me a minute. The error having is based on what we pasted, like the links in those in those code base that we just pasted from Swagger. Of course, we don't have some of those files, right? So that's why you see, that's why you can see that we have that error. Okay. So what I'm trying to do right now is let's see. Give me 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay. So I am trying to quickly fetch the middleware that I'm going to use. So I basically want to create a middleware that um, I would call that kind of like the schema validator, right? So we can call that the schema validator. We want to use Joy, okay? We want to use Joy, and the way that would work is that when you call that validator, we simply want to compare the request body that is coming in, and the schema that you have created, right? So if we take a look at one of those packages we have, the schema that we expect to have in there, of course, if we're using Joy, we have to first start off by installing Joy, right? While we're having Joy installed, let's go to feedbacks and let's go to schema. So right here, we're going to create our schema, code. So I'm going to say const Joy equals require Joy, okay? And I am going to say, let's say let schema. This is going to be the schema that we're going to use for our feedback creation, right? So I'm going to say create feedback schema. So that is equals joy.objects. And we are going to put in the object right now. So If we take a look at the object we are expecting to have, right, from what we have here, so first name, last name, email, I can simply put up, copy the whole thing here, take some of these things off. Okay. And now I'm going to just have to replace this with joy.string. You might want to set like a min max, you want it to have like a minimum value of this, like maybe a minimum of this of dot min of like 3. It should not have less than 3 characters, and of course dot max of maybe like 100 if that is what you want to use. And I would say this is required, right? So this is required. So I can simply reuse this, right here. For the email, that's the email message string. Let's keep this at 2000. Which means we're expecting at least 2000 characters. And they are probably all required. The business name, I don't want to use this. Let's just say it's a string and it's also required. So everything is required. Um, yeah. So right now you have the no, this is not right. So let's take this off. Okay. So right now you have the create feedback schema. I think we can even export this directly. So export dot create feedback schema. Right. So since we have this, we can basically call this inside the route. Right. So we can bring in our schema in here. Let's go straight into the account. We already have a simple code for our route. So just reuse that inside the route file here. This time around, this is our feedback route, of course. So feedback, and we are basically posting, right? So post feedback. Okay. So we're going to call this create feedback and create feedback. So right here, we're going to bring in the middleware, right? This is exactly where we have to, bring in the middleware. Yeah, we want to also specify that for this particular middleware, since we are creating this stuff, we have to basically do the validate. We have to create the validate, a middleware function. So let's say validate schema, right? And then what exactly is the schema we are using here? The schema we are using is right here, which is create feedback schema. So let's go ahead and import the schema, right? So this is importing controllers, and this is import schemas. Okay, and our schema is going to be this create feedback schema equals require schema, right? So we have the create feedback schema right here. And we also need to bring in the validate schema, which is the middleware. So let's just bring that from here. So middleware functions. So const. So for the middleware function, we have, let's call that the schema validator. Okay, I think I already have that validate schema. So yeah, so that is the middleware slash, let's just call that validate schema, which is the name of the file, right? So let's come in here and create that file, validate schema.js. And within the validate schema right now, I am first going to, so I am first going to probably, okay, so let's do this. So I'm going to say const, let's just say exports dot validate schema. And I am going to, this is going to be a function, right? This is going to be a function that will first expect, the schema itself, right? So it's going to wrap around, we're going to return the entire async function, request, response, and next, right? So let's say let data equals await. So this is where we're going to basically perform, our validation, our joy validation, right? So this is all going to perform our joy validation. And after doing that, I am simply going to say, if the data is not valid, then something else should should happen. But I think I'm actually thinking if I should separate the validator itself from the middleware. And I'm thinking of this because I don't know if there's a scenario where we might want to use the validator separately, right? I'm going to say validator, and I'll probably make this an helper function of something like that, an helper function. So let's just say we have validator. So let's create an async function for that. So the data and the schema itself, um, yeah, and I'm simply going to have a try. So let's say we have the value equals await schema itself dot validates async, because I know that we'll be using validate async inside our schema, right? Since our schema is a joy object, remember it has the validate async method. So we want to validate with the data, and I will simply return if this is valid, right? I'll simply return if it's valid. I'll say return true, okay, alongside the value. And yeah, I think this is basically what I want. But if there's an error, right, we want to catch that error right here. So we're going to catch an error and to return is valid. This is the object shape I want to use. So this is also going to return the error itself, right? So this is exactly what I want to use right here. So when I say validator, this is what we're going to await, right? And now the thing about this is I'm creating this separately because I want to use, I'm going to move this to an helper function, just in case we need to use that outside of the middleware, okay? At any point in time, maybe inside some of our controllers, right? So I think it's better if we, like separate it, this way. All right, so let's say we have the validator, we'll call the validator and we're going to pass the request dot the body, right? So we're going to pass the request dot body, and yeah, we're going to also pass across our schema, right? So when it gets here, this is going to basically get here, and you see the data will be the request dot body, and this will be our schema that was passed in. Of course, when we called it, okay, we're going to pass it in here, and of course pass it in here again to perform that operation. So what do we have here? Right, I think this works. So if it's not valid, right, I think it has a function called is valid. Yeah, correct. So if it's not valid, let's simply throw an error, right? So let's throw an error, and we should say data.error, based on what we get back from here, right? So if it's not valid, we throw the data.error. Yeah, and if it's valid, of course, just next, because we want to now move it into the main route function itself, right? So I think this actually works. We can basically use a try catch block here, right? We can definitely make use of the try catch block here. So let's have the catch. So another error here, and the array as the status. Um, so 422, right? It was unable to process it. Okay. So now JSON, I would simply pass in a message saying that, yeah, I will just pass in the error message itself. But remember, based on the shape of our data, we need to send both message and status, right? So status failed. Remember, based on what we created in our API. So this is currently what we have, and yeah. Let's go ahead and try this. So we have the validator itself, and we have the validate schema middleware. Let's separate this. Let's put this inside maybe a utils folder. Okay, I'm going to call it helper, right? Or I will just call it validator. And I'm doing this because I feel it's quite better to have it separate, of course. It's quite better to have it separated from the middleware file. So at any point in time, we can call the validator util and reuse it. all I have to do is export, and in order to bring that into our middleware, what we have to do is simply import it here, right? So I would say const validator equals require let's see what I'm missing. Util slash validator. Correct. So hopefully this works, but I'm sure we might have some errors. So let's go ahead and say nodemon index. Let's see if we have an error with our oh yeah, we still have some of the basic errors that we got earlier, which are some of these things here. So let's take them up. So we have the get feedback right here. I'm not going to use this, so I'm simply going to put my main code block here. Same applies to this. My main code block goes in here, and of course right here as well. So my main code block goes in here. So at least from the structure, I just wanted you to be able to see the way it was arranged, right? But I prefer to structure this myself. Export.this equals this, right? Yeah, so you can choose to structure your code this way. So let's also go back to remember we are still having that error because of the thing we added here. So let's take some of these things off. We are not using them, but I hope you are able to get the point of working with some of the code block. If you have your own structure, maybe this is something you like to use, so you can explore that. Okay, so you might want to explore that. Let's take this off. So we have put account, post account, delete account, and if you check out the route as well, we have a create account. So which means this is meant to be post account based on what we have in there, right? Copy and put that here as well. So let's save. Let's also go to our feedback controller. You see we have get feedback, get feedbacks, and post feedback, right? So what are we creating now? We're creating a post feedback. Let's go ahead and call that post feedback. Just simply based on what we have in the controller, right? Nothing special at all. So post feedback. Let's save that. So let's try to fix any other potential error that we might have. So you see, I was able to fix that, and the errors are gone, right? And what we have to do now is to test, the feedback. If it would come back with a successful data, if we're able to validate the schema, which is the major thing we want to do first. Okay. Um, if I come back to our Swagger UI, I am simply going to try this out by clicking on try it out, and I just want to see what the data would look like if it is valid. Okay, if it is valid. So let's go into post feedback, and let's just console.log req.data, right? Or probably just return this res.json req.body, right? So let's just do this. All right, so let's try this. So let's execute. Let's see what we have. So what do we get? What do we get from here? It said fail to fetch. I hope we did not make any mistakes. So let's come back here. So we have, you see right here we have localhost 3000, right? But remember that our API is running on 3001, right? So don't make that silly mistake. Let's go back into Swagger, go straight to the top and fix that. Save it. What you want to refresh. Okay, so let's wait for a while. It's probably still restarting. All right, let's run that again. Okay, so I'm simply going to click on try it out again. I just want to send this. Okay, so if I send that now, it says now we have an error. It's saying 404 not found. We're trying to post feedback, right? And it's saying it's not found. So in order to verify, what what is wrong, we have to first start from the index. Did we bring in the module? Of course, we did not, right? So let's go ahead and bring in the module. So feedback. Which is the way I was able to add the module very fast, right? So now we have that module in here. It's as simple as that. All right. So let's go ahead and test run this again, right? Let's execute this again. So let's see what we get this time. So This time around, we're of course sending this to /feedback at localhost port 3001. And what we get here is it says success. Let's really verify what we're having here. These are the responses. Okay, so /feedback is telling us server response failed to fetch. Okay, and we have to really figure out why we are having that specific error, because this is the post. If I'm not making any mistake here, this is the post/feedback. All right, so let's quickly jump into the feedback route, at least to get a hint of why we're having that error. So we have you see we have feedback, but we did not export feedback. So this is how I am basically, like analyzing the whole thing from one step to the other. And you see, it's not that, difficult to, get where you're possibly making a mistake. So now we are sending out feedback, right? Which is what we created here, require express.router. The question is, are we really hitting the /feedback endpoint, right? Are we getting there at all? Let us check out what we have here. And now you see we have an error with joy.email. It says that it is not a function. So I am probably making a mistake there in my schema, and I'm going to simply jump back into the schema to verify the mistake that we have. So right here I said joy.string, joy.this, joy.that, and it's saying joy.email is not valid. Okay, so that leaves me thinking. Um, joy.email is not valid. Yeah, I think it has to be joy.string.email. I don't know, but let's see. I think it has to be joy.string.email. I'm going to try that first. I might be wrong though, but let's try it. If it's wrong, I will quickly do a Google search so that we can figure it out. Okay, so now what do we get? I just saved it, so I have to wait for a while. Let's execute that again. Let's see if we still okay. So if I execute this, okay, so now it's saying error not found. We can't post to this specific endpoint, which is /feedback. All right, so that is 404. Okay, that's quite weird. But I want to know why. So I want to know why we're having that error. Um, create feedback schema. Okay, that's fine. Let's see. So back in our route, we have post/feedback. And right here we have the validate schema, post/feedback. Okay. Let's see why we are having that specific error. Let's go back to Swagger. Send that again. Localhost 3001/feedback. Okay, so we definitely have an error around here. Hmm. So we definitely have an error around here. Um, I honestly don't know why we're having this specific error, because it sort of seems like it can't find you know that specific route, even though we have that route here, and even though that route happens to be valid, right? So we have the route, and we have feedback route, okay, and we're able to have the feedback endpoint right here, and we also exported the feedback. All right. So if we are not getting that feedback, then there's something definitely not right. Okay, there's something definitely not right. Let us explore this using. Let me see. So I quickly want to explore this, to understand why we're not getting that endpoint, because the code seems valid. Yeah, so because the code seems to be very valid. So let me see why. All right, I'm simply going to call the home endpoint, right, which is with get first of all, and not masterclass, just like this. Okay. So of course this is valid. Okay, that makes sense. So if I go to feedback posts, this time around I want to use this body. Okay, so it's telling me that this is not found, so which means we actually do have a problem. Hmm. Okay, so that means we actually do have a problem, and wow, that's quite yeah. I mean that's quite funny to see. It's quite funny to see that we're not getting the endpoints that we need. So feedback.post. I simply exported that from here. I think this has to probably do with the way I exported this, right? So the level of export equals feedback. Okay, all right. So requires a middleware function but got undefined. Okay. That's quite strange. So model.exports equals feedback. Yeah, I mean, if you can spot this error, you can let me know in the chat. I'm trying to figure out why we're having this error. Because we are able to get the feedback object, which is correct. Require express.router, that's also very correct. And we have the post feedback, also correct. So where am I making that mistake? Where am I making that mistake? Feedback, feedback, validate schema. Okay, I don't know if we're even getting here. It's a little bit weird. So it's not. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay, so I just noticed something. I just noticed something. So requires a body. Our function here is probably giving us a problem. Oh, okay. All right. So our function there is definitely giving us a problem. Our validator function is definitely giving us a problem. If we can grab the request item here, it means this is definitely giving us a problem, and we have to resolve. Our validate schema has some bugs in there. Without the validate schema, if I should send this, um, send again. So it says no response. Hmm. Um, res.json, okay, request.body. Why are we having this? Okay, so you said that the endpoint wasn't specified in the index.js file. No, it was. It was specified in the index.js file, right? So we have the feedback, and we brought in all the feedback item when we use it this way. So and these are all the endpoints, right? The posts, which is right here, right? And this is the feedback itself that we brought in. So from the controller. So this is correct. This is correct actually. Okay, so what if I try this? What if I try this? So that is correct actually. Yeah, that is the endpoint. Yeah. So what if we do this? So feedback dot get feedback is valid. Okay. So what if I try this? And now we're getting like slash feedback. What's the error from here? Okay, so if I try this and I do the get feedback, yeah. So yeah, of course, right? So that works, right? That works. I can say hello. Definitely, this is going to be a minor error, right? So if we're calling the posts and we are getting the post feedback, that's what we call in here. We said export dot post feedback equals blah 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 request response, okay, async, okay, and response dot JSON. We just want to send out the request dot body, right? We just want to send out the request dot body. So um, let me go back again and oh right. Let's see. Back to the index. Go back to the top. App.use express.json. Okay, that's correct. That seems to be correct to me. So if I send this now, uh, post feedback, send. Oh, yeah, that was my mistake. Okay. So yeah, I think I found the little issue. The little issue was with this, right? And for some weird reasons, it was not able to to fetch this particular file. I think maybe I did not save this because I did not really make any serious change apart from taking off some of these items. And yeah, I think I get it. You see, from the code we pasted, if you guys can hear me, from the code we pasted, we added this item you're seeing here, and that seems to have, it is not in line with the framework, right? I mean, that's a very crazy error, but I did not notice it. Don't do that. Don't add that body item at the end, right? Because it was the major problem. Okay, so we spent a lot of time trying to fix it. Meanwhile, we created the funny error. So yeah, um, don't make that mistake when you copy the boilerplate. Try to make sure you remove the items you do not need. Okay, always make sure to do that. Remove the items you do not need. That was a silly error from my end. So let's go back and put in our middleware again, our validate schema middleware. So we're going to say validate schema, and we're going to bring in the create feedback schema. All right, add your comma. So now we have the feedback. We can create a feedback using this. So if I send this, I think that is still loading, so we have to take some time. All right, so we're able to fetch the exact item back. What if I do not put the complete detail? Let's send this. So it says failed, validation error, business is required. Okay, So that is exactly what we want to have. That is exactly the functionality we're looking for. The error was the fact that in our controller, there was a tiny bit of problem with next and body. This is not, this is the problem, right? Take that off. You can leave the next option here, but I don't need it either because I'm already doing my validation for now in the middleware. All right. So please don't make that mistake. Okay, so now we are able to get here. I don't want to waste too much of our time because we have another session in the evening. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a CRUD operation, right? Using Mongoose. I think I already have Mongoose installed, and I'm going to perform that CRUD operation. Yeah, I'm basically going to call my repository. That's how we do it, right? So if I say we have a const, I'm going to bring in the repository itself. So repository equals require, and now I am not using the model yet. I'm going to show you what I will do instead at some point. Right now, I am calling the repository straight from my controller, right? So I can bring in the repository. That's a file. So repository. Okay. So that's the file I am actually bringing in, right? And we have that file right here. So what we have get feedback, we have get feedbacks, right? And we have post feedback. So what I'm going to do is since my validation is no longer happening here, I'm going to simply create a new feedback. So I am simply going to call repository.create feedback. Now that, of course, is going to call my repository, which I have not even created just yet, right? Of course, I have to wait. So I have not set this up yet, and in order to set this up, I am going to quickly jump into doing that right now. Let's first get into the model, to make sure we fix this properly. I'm going to start by bringing in Mongoose. I want to set up Mongoose when our application is loaded, right? So that we don't do it inside the file. So on index, let's go ahead and simply set up Mongoose right here. So let's start by defining Mongoose. Mongoose equals require Mongoose. We already have Mongoose installed, and we are then going to connect to Mongoose. So I would say, let's say connection equals, I think it's a MongoDB. I keep forgetting this, but I'm sure it is a let's use 127.0.0.21, and we have the port of 27017. Correct? Yeah, I think so. And we'll call this feedback, right? Let's just call it feedback or feedback app. Yeah. So this is our basic connection string to start with. So we can simply say mongoose dot connect, and we can just throw in our connection, right? Um, yeah, I think there's a property called use new URL, blah blah blah. I don't think that's necessary for us, but let's just leave this for now. So we expect that this should connect. We should also we should probably have this outside the file and pass this in as a dependency, so that if MongoDB doesn't connect, our application will not run. Yeah, we can do that. It is possible to do that, and I would always advise you probably explore doing that. Let's start by moving this closer to the set of imports that we have here, and this guy closer to this. So we are going to configure this later, so that if this is not connected, please make sure it is above your routes, because it should load first. We'll make sure that if this is not loaded successfully, we don't get here, right? We throw an error or something. Okay. But yeah, I mean, using that option right now, we expect that we should be connected to our database, right? We'll make some adjustments later, and what we are going to do is we need to define schemas, models, and all those kind of stuff within our feedback. Let's quickly jump into the schema again. We can define our schema here, define our model elsewhere. But remember that this is meant to also contain our business model. Let's start by just having the Mongoose, the entire thing that has to do with Mongoose, inside this model file. All right. So I'm going to be fast with this. I'm going to start by saying const, let's call that feedback schema, right? Equals new, and we're going to say Mongoose. Require Mongoose. Okay, so equals new, right? That's correct. So mongoose.schema, right? And we're going to, put in our schema right here. All right, so our schema goes in right here. So let's take a look at our schema again. We are still going to work with the same set of data that we already have here. First name, last name, email, message, and business. Okay, first name, last name, email, message, and business. All right, so first name, and this is a string, right? Right, this is a string. Last name, also a string. Email, it's a string thing. Email, message, business. Okay, so I don't want to use like object IDs for tracking the business. Let's just save that as a string as well. So in order to create our model, I'll simply say const um, feedback model, right? So yeah, equals mongoose dot model. That's right. So we have the schema, but let's call this feedback, right? And we'll then have our feedback schema, right? So feedback schema, just like this. So now that we have this, we can then proceed to create, the necessary methods, right? The necessary methods that, this model would eventually work with, okay? So this is our feedback model. Always, comment on your code and make sure the comments are, are good enough to explain what you have done. So Mongo's feedback schema. Okay. So yeah. So right within the model, you can decide to do some configuration here. We might basically choose to work with an object, and we can call this, feedback model equals. Within our object, we have three basic operations. If I'm not making a mistake here, I think it's three basic operations. The first one we're trying to fix up now is um, create feedback, right? So we're trying to fix up a create feedback, and this is what I'm going to do. So when you're creating a feedback, we're expecting this, right? This is what we want to have, and within this object, we want to basically pass in our feedback data, right? And when we pass in the feedback data, we basically want to perform that operation, right? That mongoose operation in here. What does our mongoose operation, need to look like specifically? Um, yeah, so I'm going to call this, makes sense, to be the model, right? Feedback model. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a try operation here, try catch to start with. So let's catch any potential error. Um, yeah. So let's see. We are going to then bring up the new feedback right here. We're going to await that. So remember, we need to also make sure this is asynchronous. Okay, so let's say we are going to await this, okay, and if we're awaiting this, we're simply going to call the feedback, and we're going to say dot create, right? Our documents that we are going to pass in, our document that we're going to pass in would be what comes inside the request body, which is what I would refer to here as data. Now, there's something wrong. If you take a close look at this, you see that I have a little bit of a problem right here, so I have to fix that. Okay, because I'm trying to use an object. So this is basically what we have. If there's an error, you want to tell us that, okay, something went wrong, okay? Probably let's just throw that for now. So throw error and error, all right? ERR, okay? So we're not really going to, yeah, we can choose to return. I think we can actually return the whole thing. So if you understand what I did here, just let me know. It's quite simple, but I mean, there are so many things that we can also do to make this better. We have an object which represents our model. This can be a class, and then we have which is feedback model that create feedback, and we can have like get feedback and all those other stuff. Here. So I'm trying to make it simple, right? So feedback model right now, and we are passing in our data. So feedback model that creates feedback. Um, in order to make this I would say easier to relate with, we already have, let's go back to our controller. So the feedback controller, we already have this. Now, instead of calling the repository directly from here, we would rather call the model. And this is what I was trying to explain to you. So now we're calling the model, and we have the model. So I am going to simply call model.what. So this is exactly where I call the model dot, let's go back and see what we have in our model. So this is where I call the model dot, model dot feedback model. Okay. So let's bring in the feedback model. So I'm going to come back here. Let's call that feedback model. Feedback. I'm showing you how I'm building this up and why I think we should, adopt one other idea, one other pattern instead of this other pattern, right? And I believe if you have any question while I'm doing that, feel free to ask me. So feedback model is what we're grabbing right now. So we're basically going to use feedback model, right? Because we're calling our feedback model right here, okay? And the function, what function do we have there? Create feedback, right? And then we simply need to pass in our request dot body. Now, this line of code is expected to quickly jump into the model, create the feedback, right, and return a value, right. So which means you probably want to have a const result if there's going to be a result, right, and you probably say res dot maybe JSON, right, if you have created that, and you want to pass in like the status okay, and that's if everything goes well. But of course, you always need to check things properly, and your message, right? What exactly would be the message? Success, right? Or successfully created. You can add your message in there. And remember to always have your status, which is 201 if it is created, right? And yeah, maybe you just want to append the entire results. Maybe that is what you want to do. So this is basically what you have. And you are basically communicating with the model, right? You successfully set up a communication between the controller and the model. So the next thing you should ask yourself is, okay, now that we have the model, do we really want to call, our database, directly, which is our Mongoose database? Is this exactly what we want to call? Like, do we want to perform this operation directly in here? What exactly is the benefit of having a repository? What exactly is the benefit of having a repository, right? The way I teach people is I try to make them understand that your model should be a kind of the business logic, right? Your business logic, the way you define your business, right? And you might be saying you can do all this in one file. That is very correct. But having a structured, project this way, it's way better, right? Now that you have the model, do you really want to do this in here, or do you think it is better to have the repository handle every single database operation? Why do I think it's better to have a repository handle every database operation? It's basically because I want to be able to swap out my database at any point without bothering about my model or my controller. So I want to swap out my database without bothering myself about what happens in my model, or without telling myself that the model is going to, is no longer going to work because my database is, kind of like tightly coupled with my business logic, right? And I've taught you how to do this several times, and I'm sure you know what I'm trying to describe. But let me take a look at the charts if you don't understand what I'm saying. So, sir, please link to the project GitHub repo. I'm going to push that to GitHub today, and I'll share with you. But I want to know, for those of you that are watching right now, I believe most of you are backend engineers. So do you understand what I mean? This is our model file. Should we perform this in here and have this tightly coupled with our business logic? This is going to contain our business logic, right? Do we want this to be part of our business logic? Because if this is specifically, supposed to work with our data, then do you think it is right to have this, coupled with our business logic? Personally, for me, I will not want to do this. Personally, for me, I would want to export my model, which is my Mongoose model, and I want my repository to do the job. I simply want my repository to do the job of saving to database, reading from database. So repository communicates, and I've shown you this diagram several times if you can remember. I said, what is the name of that tool? What's the name of this tool? I just used it right now. Excalibur. So I said the route communicates with controller. So take a look at that connection. The route communicates with controller. The controller communicates with your model. The model communicates with your repository. Routes. I'm basically showing you what I think is the best way to reduce, coupling, right? And this communicate with your model. Okay, so this is what we have, right? And the idea is, this guy communicates with this guy communicates with this guy. I don't know if any of you remember us doing this, and this guy communicates with, this guy, right? Now, this one is responsible for accepting requests and performing data validation, or other kind of things such as um, user validation. So it works with the middleware basically, right? So this guy would work with all the middleware, okay? So this guy is going to work with all the middleware. So that is through middleware actions, okay? And if you have the link to this, you can check it out later. Our controller is basically going to always do what it is meant to do, which is um, simply to direct the flow of inputs collected into our business logic. So anything that has to do with your business, anything that is tied to your business, right, would definitely be in the model, right? So this is our business related logic. Okay, our repository is tied to your database, connected to our database. So the only thing that is connected to your database is this. So imagine if you're using Mongo, right? MongoDB, and then you have operations. Now you have one rule. I perform something and I return, right? So something must be returned, okay? So inside MongoDB, I'm just going to point out some things. We have create, we have delete, and we also have updates. All right, now take a look at this. When I create something, I want to return a pattern. I want to return a kind of like a JSON object, right? Return a message, right? So this is what happens when I create something. When I delete something, I probably want to also return a message, maybe deleted successfully. And when I also do this, I want to return a message. Now, what you're seeing here is a structure I have created. If I decide to migrate to Postgres, or I decide to migrate to SQLite for some reasons, do you understand what's going on here? Can anybody tell me if you understand the point I'm trying to pass here? Does this affect anything here in my business logic? Do you think this would affect anything in my business logic? So long I work with a standard pattern like this. Just tell me what you think. If you can hear me, I'm not seeing any response in the chat. If you can hear me. So our model is going to do things like it's going to call create, let's say create feedback, deletes feedback, updates feedback. This is our model. So yeah, this is always going to be our model. This model is tied. If this model can be tied, this same model you're seeing here, just like this, can work with this. The same model can work with this, and the same model can eventually work with this. Do you understand me? Oh yeah, I think Samuel is asking, what do you mean by swapping out databases? Okay, that's what I just explained now, Samuel. Samuel, do you understand what I mean now when I mean swapping out database? Seems like you guys cannot hear me very well, or probably um, Samuel. Who else do I have on the call? Don Willie, are you here? Okay, so Samuel is asking, what of things that are tied to the database but does not involve the model? Okay, like what? Like checking if a user exists in the DB. Okay, so checking if a user exists in the DB, that is on your middleware level, right? And if you swap out a database, you should be able to, perform the same operation, right? A middleware is simply check. A middleware is not something you want to really fully classify as your business logic, but it's something you have to do, of course, right? You have to check if a user actually exists, right? And you have chosen to do that in your middleware. I believe that if you're doing that with a specific database and you have your implementation, it will not affect definitely it won't affect your business logic, right? It won't affect your business logic, Samuel. But you ought to make sure that you implement your code in such a way that when you are swapping out things from your middleware, and you're swapping out the database of choice that your middleware is connected to, I mean, you have to make sure that the interface you have created is simple enough, so that by the time you have a new middleware, you are able to get the same response message. Because remember that it's the response message you are working with. So long you have a standard shape of data you work with, when something goes in and it comes out, and you're able to swap that thing, to a different provider, keeping the standard, communication style, which is the message style, it works perfectly. All right. Does anybody have any other question regarding this? Because we're ending this session in 2 minutes. Do you have any other question regarding this? And do you understand what I'm trying to do with this structure? I mean, it's very amazing to work with that structure. I can tell you, it is indeed amazing to work with that structure. I just created, the create feedback option. I can have the update feedback inside my model, right? And I told you can actually use a class for this, okay? And I can also have a delete feedback if we have anything like that, which I think we do not have something like that. Instead, what we have is submit feedback, fetch single feedback, and fetch all feedback. So I'm going to say fetch all feedback and fetch or get, single feedback. Now, this is my model, right? This is my model. So, for when you're getting a single feedback, you probably want to get that feedback with some sort of ID. When you are, fetching all the feedback, you probably don't even need to pass any data at all. But when you're creating a feedback, you have to pass in that item. And at this point in time, this is where I want you to really understand that you have a model in here you have created, which is the feedback model that you have created here. And this feedback model is something you need to, get into your repository. It's something you have to get into your repository, right? Always understand that it's something you have to export, into your repository. So let me go the route of saying export dot, our feedback model, right? Export dot feedback model, and yeah, Is there something wrong with this? Let's see. Let's save that. So I have exports dot, okay, that's correct. So exports dot feedback model, and this has to do with our Mongoose, feedback model. So don't get this wrong at all. We have this feedback model, which is our main model, file that we're exporting, right? We can choose to call this something else, right? It can be Mongoose feedback model, right? So if that's what you want to call it, right? Or maybe feedback collection, if you think that is better, right? Um, yeah, so I think we just have to make sure we're working with a name that that actually works best for us. And why are we exporting this? Once again, we're exporting this because we want to grab this from our repository, right? We want to make sure we grab that from our repository. And at this point in time, this is where we then need to call our repository. So I'm simply going to change this to repository, right? I'm going to say dot create. I'm changing this because we now have to bring in our const repository in here equals require repository. Okay, all right. So our repository is going to be in charge of what our database would would do, right? And we don't need to call or perform any direct database communication here. That would always happen in here, right? But this is going to then work with our model. Remember, we need something from the model. Remember, so we need something specific, which is the Mongoose model that we have there. So just make sure you check it properly. Mongoose feedback model, right? So Mongoose feedback model. We're bringing that straight from our model file. And right here we have, we have create. Remember we have create. So how do we, what pattern do you want to use in structuring this? Do you want to go the route of, export.create, which is also fine, right? You expect the data to come in, right? So just like this, and this should be asynchronous, of course. So let's say async. Okay, and now you have so now you basically have the structure you are looking for, right? So you have the create, you can have the updates, you can have the I don't think it's update. It's fetch or yeah, get single. Okay. All right. So now we just said that create return await blah blah blah. Okay, so that's fine, and we expect that this is exactly what is going to create that specific item for us, right? It's coming straight from the model, and we can go ahead to test run this. Always remember to add comments. I will do that immediately I test this. Okay. Let's go back to our model. So our model calls the repository, which is .create, exactly what we just did. Our controller calls the model. Remember, which is exactly what you're seeing here, our model.create. So I believe this is good, and we can probably try this out to see if it would save our data to our database, right? And we can then continue to outline some of the things we've done there, right, later in the evening. So let's go ahead and simply send a record here. I'm going to put my name, Marvelous. I'm going to put surname, I'll use Solomon, and I'll leave the email like that. For the message, I will say quite, yeah, let's just say the service was good, right? And the business, I'll just say both click. Remember, we've not created any business yet, so we're going to do that, okay? I sent the link to the Escali draw already in the chat. Please check the chat, it's there. I think I did that. All right, I did that already. So let's try to do this now. We're sending this to feedback, and we first of all need to check to make sure that our code still runs well. And if there's any problem, we have to fix that. So right now it says assessing non-existing days, blah blah blah. Okay, so let's make sure that that exists. That is existing. So Mongoose feedback model. Go back to the repository. Um, okay, so it says it cannot get the Mongoose feedback model. Why is that? Let's save this properly again. Okay. Oh yeah, I mean that exists. So maybe I did not save well. I guess. Let's try this. Okay, so we have an error, and it says cannot read property of undefined reading creates. Okay. All right, so it cannot treat property of undefined reading creates, and this is what we wanted to call from here. So if I am bringing in the repository, just like this, oh yeah, correct. That is definitely correct. So when we say exports create, and this is going out of the repository, the repository itself, we have a problem. We have a problem because this is unable to find the just from the error right now, it's unable to really find that create item there. So let's try to figure out why. Okay, so that's quite weird. That's quite weird because hmm, yeah, I was actually thinking it was not updated, which is meant to be the exact. So let's check this again. Object.create feedback. So cannot read properties of undefined blah blah blah, and yeah, it says warning assessing non-existent property this of module exports inside the secular dependency. Okay, so I want to try and figure out why it says it cannot figure out this guy. So I'm going to do this right now. Okay, so I'm going to export this, which I think is actually the same thing. But let me figure out. I want to figure out why it's giving up that error of not being able, to yeah, of not being able to get the model. I think that is exactly the error that I'm getting from this. Okay, that is the error that I'm getting from this. I can simply call this feedback even. So this is feedback. right? Okay, so I'm grabbing feedback exactly from here, all right? Exactly from there. Okay, so let's do this one last time. Let's see what happens here. So if I send this now, um, okay, so we are back at it. Uh, Cannot read property of undefined. Reading create feedback. So where do we have create feedback? Where do we have create feedback? Let's go to our controller and let's see what we have here. So we have create feedback other than create. Okay, so create feedback. Okay, so feedback model, which is our model, that's right. Create feedback and we'll pass in the body. Okay, so I'll call the create feedback and we passed in that body. Are we missing anything? Are we probably missing something? I don't know. What do you think we're missing here? Let's take a look at this together. What exactly do you think we're missing here? I can't seem to. We still have the same, the same error. So what exactly do you think we're missing here? What have we? What did we not get right? Right. So what exactly is it? I can't figure it out just yet, but I'm sure that we're probably, making a tiny mistake that we need to resolve. Right. That is the only reason this would turn out this way. Right. So let's try that again. I'm going to jump back into bringing in create feedback here. That's what we're working with, right? We have create feedback, just exactly the way we brought it in here. And yeah, so if everything turns out to be good in our controller, I'm going to bring in the create feedback and of course create feedback directly. Okay, so if we call this, we need to pass in the request.body, right? Straight from the model, and I hope that is correct. Yeah, that is correct. Okay, so and I then called repository.create, which is right here, repository that I brought in. And I said create. Okay, so let's see. It said unexpected token const. Let's save that again. Um, is this not? Weird that sometimes go back. Still the same thing. Okay, so let's see. This is coming from our model.js, which I think we have checked several times now. So our model.js, and that error is basically coming from, okay, line 21. So we have line 20, let's see, okay, cannot read property of undefined, blah, blah, blah. Hmm. That's weird. That's weird. So when I call repository.create, it basically does the job and works with the data that was passed in. Console.log, just to debug this. I'm not using the debugger, by the way, just console.log. Let's see what we have. Okay, so it is unable to get to call that create. Anyone spots the error here? So cannot read property of undefined, blah blah blah, create feedback, model JS21. We're able to console this. We have a problem, right? So we're able to console this. It means that we got to this point, but cannot read property of this create. So we have a problem with and I think our problem is still coming from our model. Our model right here we're trying to work with. We created a model, right? We call this a feedback model, right? And we exported our feedback model. Okay, so what is wrong with that? Okay, so we exported our feedback model. And all we need to call is, our feedback dot creates exactly, which is what we did inside our controller. Which is what we did inside our controller. And it cannot find that. Hmm. So guys, sorry for the delay, but I'm just trying to figure out, why it's unable to, why it is giving us, such an error. All right, so let's see now what do we get. So it says cannot report undefined, reading creates exactly. So it says it cannot read property of undefined reading create, which means it is unable to perform that operation inside the repository. This, I guess, that is the problem. So I'm going to try this right here before I take it off. We have feedback, and we also have feedback right here. Let's just test it in here before I take it off. So if I save, that is created exactly, right? You see that works. That works in here. But when I choose to work with this, when I choose to work with this in a different file, uh, it is unable to to give me exactly what I expect to have, right? And that is a problem. That's a problem. So that is a problem. Yeah, that's a problem. And I should be able to do this, right? I should be able to do this directly. So if I say feedback dot create, yeah, I should be able to do this directly, but it doesn't work. I see. Doesn't quite work well as it should, right? Doesn't quite work well as it should. Of course, it's not a function, so it has to work this way. Yeah, I mean, if you figure out what is probably wrong with this feedback, but creates. Uh-huh. Okay. So it's unable to specifically work the way this is, right? It's unable to specifically work the way it is, or the way we want it to function, which is a little bit of a challenge, right? A little bit of a challenge. Um, but yeah, let's. I think we'll probably have to fix that in the evening. I think that is definitely a little bit of a challenge coming from some of the things we have done here. Probably the way we are working with the exports, right? I guess. Yes. So get feedback, get feedbacks. Finally, post feedback. Okay. So yeah, this is okay. So we have so we basically have this happening in our controller. So I'm just trying to export this whole thing to like a different pattern, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with the previous pattern even, but I'm just trying to get a glimpse of why it says it cannot find it. Okay, so this is our. I'm going to share this with you. So let's get a single feedback and let's get all feedback. Okay, good. So now we have the create feedback, which is this. We have return, blah blah blah. The feedback that we brought in from the model, which is of course right here. Um, yeah, so we're going to fix that in the evening, right? I mean, we still have that error. It cannot, work with that file. It cannot work with it. It's saying, it cannot really work with that specific method, and I'm sure that is as a result of how it was exported right out of that file, right? So we are going to we're going to fix that. We're going to fix that. Um, we are going to fix that. So we're going to fix that. Okay. Let's see. So it seems like the way we are exporting the Mongoose model is not the right way to export a Mongoose model. That is, yeah. So please, if you have exported a Mongoose model, please check and check and tell me what you think should be done in this kind of scenario, right? I think it's not able to grab it as a model in itself. Okay, it is not able to grab it as a model in itself. Instead, it is. Oh, right. Okay. 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 I get that. It's not able to grab it as a model in itself. So it probably expects. Um, so thinking about what I'm seeing here, it's unable to grab this as a model in itself, and that is not very. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to the repository. That's quite weird, though. Quite weird. But I think yeah, I think it's basically going to give us the same thing. So that's quite weird. It cannot grab that item, that model item. We're going to fix that, so no issues. We're going to fix that when we meet again in the evening. But yeah, I just figured out that you cannot export this like this, right? You have to basically say module.export, equals this. So this is basically what it expects, right? Um, I mean that is exactly what I just figured. So yeah, now it says feedback is not defined. So but this is basically what it expects that how you should export a mongoose model, right? So it's expecting that you do it this way. um Now the problem I have with doing it this way is by the time you choose to import this to work with it, um yeah, by the time you import this to work with it, you'll probably then have a problem with what you have in your controller, right? I just call this feedback, but of course there's no specific way to determine that that is the feedback that was created, right? Of course, this is going to tell you that the feedback is not defined, so we have to fix that. Fix that in our next session. Please go ahead and try to resolve that yourself. Someone is saying that create is also being used in the repository file while being used to call. No, I don't think so. Is it? Is it? It's not. It's not. That is not the issue. We don't have dot create in the model. We only have like dot create feedback, right? It's not a single dot create feedback. So we'll check this in the evening, guys. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Yeah, by 8 p.m. Remember to join in early, okay? 8 p.m. and we'll finalize this. Okay, so bye. All right.